you. Place of EU-China relationship in the EU's global strategy, according to your view? And did you spot any change of the position, the position of the China-EU relationship in the past year?
Well, that's a very big question. I would obviously say that the European Union looks in its global strategy at all the major powers around the globe. So that means, of course, we have a strategy that puts a lot of emphasis on the United States, and we have also a strategy that puts a lot of emphasis on China. So I would say certainly China is in the top of the interests of the European Union, the geostrategic interests. Now then, I think what is also true is that the importance of China is rising. It's rising for many, many years now, and I think accordingly it receives a more and more important place in the European discussions.
Yeah, and how do you see the development of EU-China relationship in 2010 and 2018? Does it develop faster or a little bit slower than before?
2018 compared to 2010?
No. It's how do you see the development of EU-China relationship in the past year? Does it develop faster or a little bit slower than before?
Well, this is difficult to say. I think certainly what I do remember is that in the last 3 years there were a number of very important joint projects. I remember, of course, the G20 presidency of China, followed by the G20 presidency of Germany, and I think it's fair to say that both China and Germany, I think, really worked well together as regards this G20 leadership and the G20 presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a very close process of collaboration on the G20 in that regard. I would also say that for the whole issue of, the specific issue at the G20 in Hamburg, which was preserving the Paris Agreement, I think that was also only possible because of shared European-Chinese leadership. So it was a major success of shared German, European, and Chinese leadership in the G20 summit in Hamburg. So I would very much emphasize that as a very positive example of collaboration between the European Union and China. Now then, of course, there are also important points where I think there are divergences and differences of views. For example, the issue of state-owned enterprises is very much criticized in Europe. It's very much criticized the way Chinese state-owned enterprises are run in China and around the world. So that this has anti-competitive effects or competition distorting effects. So that is a big issue and a big bone of content. Perhaps another point, I guess, where there are some. I don't even know. So I think on the WTO there is sort of an ongoing process of collaboration, trying to sort out how the WTO could be reformed, and there the EU and China are working together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very difficult task. I mean, there's so many dimensions of that relation.
Exactly.
But I would certainly highlight those three, right? I mean, G20, I think very close and positive collaboration, discussion on further trade and investment agreements between the two sides is really stuck because the European side really has significant concerns as regards Chinese state-owned enterprises and lack of access to markets, and that we can debate how much that has improved. And then I would say global trading system. I think there are attempts to work together, but let's see how far we can go.
Yes. Do you agree the relationship is developing steadily?
Is developing what?
Steadily, in a steady way.
Sorry, in what way?
In a steady way.
In a steady?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it has been fairly steady in the last 1 or 2 years, I would say. Of course, I mean, I think it's important, perhaps in that context, to say that since the change of the US president, certainly Europe is caught in between this very complicated rivalry between China and the US, and that's a difficult challenge for Europe, as it is for China, as it is for the US. So I think there we have to sort of work very carefully on what can and cannot be done. And I would certainly identify these geostrategic tensions between the US and China as major source of concern for European policymakers.
Okay, great. And so, in your view, what are the main obstacles for the development of a relationship, and how do these obstacles affect the relationship?
Well, I think the main obstacles, I mean, if you take the economic one, I think that's what I mentioned. I think the differences in our economic models and the very strong push in China for technology leadership raises more and more concerns in Europe, as it does in the United States. I mean, we are far away from where the United States is, for sure, in terms of public opinion. But I think it's important to highlight that European public opinion on China is certainly, let's say, very cautious and looking very anxiously at Chinese investment and the conditions under which Chinese investments are being done in the European markets, especially in high-tech sectors.
Yeah.
So I think that's one important point in the economic relations. Let me mention, of course, there are significant parts of society in Europe that are extremely worried about, the imprisonment of Muslim minorities in the west of China, the Uyghurs. So that is certainly a big concern in civil society and in parts of the political system. Well, and then. I think what is perhaps important to say is that the EU, in contrast to the US, is much less worried and much less concerned about Chinese geostrategic military projects in its neighborhood, right? I mean, so in the US, there's all this huge discussion on, be it Taiwan, be it the various islands in the South China Sea. Now, this really isn't much of an issue in the European Union.
Yes. And do you think the two sides have done enough to clear these obstacles?
Whether China has done enough, or whether the EU
The
has
two
done
sides, yeah, the both of them.
Well, no, I mean, I frankly think no. I think we are both talking to each other, but I don't think we are advancing enough.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, do you think China and the EU have structural conflicts? Structural, like a EU and no?
No, not the same way. I mean, that's why I mentioned this geostrategic sort of military rivalry. I mean, I think there the EU doesn't really have the same kind of structural issues as China and the US have with each other.
And do you think the conflict on trade, maybe or divergences, are they or also not structural ones between EU and China?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I think the structural issue here is the role of the state in the Chinese economy, right? And that certainly is a structural issue also for Europe and not just for the US.
Okay, thank you. And as you have mentioned, the
US.
Yeah, and also, and may I ask another question? I know your time is very.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so.
Please.
You have just mentioned that the European Parliament, the Council, and the Commission have already agreed on the EU framework for the screening of foreign direct investment. How will this mechanism affect China-EU relations in the future?
Well, look, I think the screening mechanism is actually an important thing for Europe to have. I think it's a standard thing that the US has, Europe has it. I'm sure China has something equivalent. And so I think it puts us basically on equal footing. So it's a good thing that the US developed that, and I think it will allow for a more balanced discussion between the European Union and China.
So in a long term, you think it is good for the development for EU-China relations?
Yeah, absolutely, because as I mentioned to you, there is a serious risk that public opinion in the European Union will turn quite hostile against China. And, I think what we should be working at towards collectively between China and the EU is to, work on where we can really have a win-win situation, right? So there it seems to me that the potential for foreign direct investment in both directions is actually very substantial, right? I mean, we have on both sides still relatively little investment into each other's economies, given the size of our economies. So I think there's a significant potential for more investment. But that investment can only happen on both sides if there is sort of not only trust on the economic, but also trust on the security side. And so I actually think this, the better and more we have good rules to play that govern this investment relation, the more we will be able in the medium run to actually harvest the benefits of this relation and avoid a backlash.
Yeah.